Now, my next guest is waiting in the wings for us. And before she comes on, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about her. She's going to be giving a slide presentation on embracing post-traumatic growth. And Helen has been through some tragic events, and often tragic events strike randomly, and they happen to anyone and they happen anywhere. And Helen lived an idyllic life in the majestic Adelaide Hills in South Australia for 3 decades when she was blindsided by a tragic event. Helen is the founder and CEO of a South Australian charity, Second Chances SA, for the past 7 years, and has overcome enormous personal setbacks while successfully leading her team through a 2-year pandemic. She speaks about navigating tragic events, a blueprint for going through and overcoming tragic loss. She has lived experience, and the capacity to go through and overcome tragedy has led her to becoming even stronger and more resilient, showing others how to become unshakable, unbreakable, and unstoppable when suffering tragedy. Helen has once sung solo in the iconic concert hall of the Sydney Opera House, and everyone I would love to welcome now to our beautiful stage, such as a virtual stage, I should probably clarify that, is the lovely Helen Glanville. Absolutely, Helen, thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure to see you again.
Well, it's a pleasure for you to have me. I mean, let's put it this way. I've never been on a business summit before, so it's going to be an interesting experience for all of us.
Well, it's just like a podcast, my darling, and you just giving a presentation instead.
Okay. So I might share my screen if that's all right with you, or are you going to introduce me?
I have already done that.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't hear it. Okay, I missed that bit.
I just espoused your greatest assets and told everyone about how wonderful you are.
Oh, you said something nice. Woohoo! Thank you so much. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about, just hold on, post-traumatic growth. And it's something that I have learnt myself over the years. And I think that we can apply this to every part of our life. So what's it looking like for you over there, Rosa? Are you happy with my looks? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, and you just look magnificent, my dear.
Oh, you say the sweetest things.
I know. You've taught me well.
So have you ever lost anything? Your glasses, your wallet, your keys, your car? Maybe not. But something very important to you. How does that make you feel? Well, with every little loss, there comes a sense of emptiness and grief. It builds up. And you might say, well, what's this got to do with business and a business summit? Well, it doesn't matter what part of our lives are impacted by loss, whether it be small or great. It always has a ripple effect, and it impacts our business, but more importantly, how we respond to loss, how we direct our thoughts and eventually have an overcoming mindset. Because I've looked back over my life and I've wondered, who has taught me how to overcome crisis, challenges, and disastrous events? Nobody. Nobody's taught me anything. But today, I want to share with you my map, my MAPP. There is hope. And at the end of this presentation, I plan to unravel it and present it to you point by point, just 4 key points that I believe are going to help you, help us all for any future disaster or crisis. It happened to me through a catastrophic fire 5 days before Christmas 2019. All we owned, our treasured memories, our belongings, our family heirlooms, clothes, jewelry, souvenirs, anything we collected along life's way, had been reduced to ash and rubble. We were made homeless overnight. It had been the last day in a 5-day scorching heat wave. We drove to work that day in the clothes and shoes that we'd put on in preparation for a regular working day, not knowing that that would be the last time we would be accessing our wardrobe, because those clothes and shoes were all that we had for the next few days. Have you ever experienced sudden and total loss when all you knew was completely destroyed? Well, for 3 decades, we had enjoyed the idyllic lifestyle in the majestic Adelaide Hills, so total and sudden loss was incomprehensible. But sudden loss can happen to us anytime, anywhere around the globe. And while you may not have suffered any loss or an event, you may know someone who has, and you've watched them helplessly, not knowing, what can we do? They may have suffered from a flood, hopefully not an earthquake, or a train derailment, a car accident. Things happen to us and none of us are exempt. So you've watched and you've wondered, what can you do? But what if there was a framework that could help us all navigate our way through the shock of sudden loss? And what if this map could take us through any situation, especially a tragic event? I have created that way through so that we can all become overcomers. And it's called the MAPP framework. And we can apply it when things strike us suddenly. We can make ourselves shockproof and more resilient in times of sudden change. But you know what? It doesn't happen overnight. But with a framework, it will happen and help us to overcome. I'd like to show you a little bit of what our lifestyle was like in these majestic, idyllic Adelaide Hills. There's no other life like it. And as a former Sydney girl, I can tell you, this was the life we always wanted. We designed our own home, and on that spread of 25 acres, it was a bit of a stretch to get it, I might add, but we had cattle. This is a little closer to the home we designed and the hedge around it. But every morning we had the luxury of waking up to the most majestic sunrises. And of course, this is autumn and you have a bit of fog in the valley. It was called Kenton Valley, the best little place in the Adelaide Hills. This is one sunrise. It's a winter sunrise, and there's another on a scorching day. And this is pretty fantastic. Oops, I skipped that one. So all sorts of shades in a beautiful palette of morning sunrises were ours for 32 years. Isn't that glorious? Oh, by the way, down the valley, that's a cherry farm. So on every continent across the globe, disaster strikes. And it's random and it comes in many forms. And a disaster always affects business. This was our beautiful home. We thought it was our forever home. The turn posts, the lacework, and of course you've got to have the traditional red roof in the middle of your property, and a beautiful rose garden too. Australia had the most devastating record of fires in 2019. Across Australia, it killed 30 people. 2,500 homes were totally destroyed. 1.25 billion animals were lost, and 27 million acres were completely burned. That's larger than Portugal, 14 times bigger than the Californian fires of 2018. But fires, as devastating as they are, will always produce green shoots, because the keepers of our land, the custodians of our land, knew very well the impact of backburning, because backburning is designed to take us back to bareness. We need to be taken back to bareness sometimes, and that's how you'd have a fresh start. Backburning ensures self-propagation of certain species of flora and fauna. And while it's always producing fresh new growth, it's a guaranteed multiplier. Like backburning produces new growth, a tragic event can produce resilience in us, which springs us forward into new life. There's the before, there's the after, looking like an apocalypse. This is the destroyed home, the one that we dreamt of, the one we built together. Overnight, welcome to our bedroom. 14 tons of metal were taken away to the metal collectors. And there you have it. The home was gone. But here's the fresh new growth. This new growth is guaranteed, and it will take about 6 to 8 weeks. But in us, it can take much longer than that, but it will come. Isn't it beautiful? We can expect it, but we also need to embrace it. This is post-traumatic growth. That one solitary night, I was in a bubble of silence for weeks. I couldn't speak. And quite frankly, for me, that's pretty much a miracle. Muted is the right word. For days, I felt like a myriad of emotions were swarming around me. But as the days became weeks, those emotions did grow weaker. For the first few months, I was drowning in a sea of sadness. It wasn't possible, was it? It didn't really happen, did it? Not our lifestyle. It was more than a home. It was a lifestyle. But we were safe because we were not allowed back onto the property in the hills that evening. We had to stay with our son. And the next morning, we received the call. It was our neighbour, Jenny. She'd done the 4-kilometre walk around the block to see what had happened overnight. And she gave me the call. Yes? What? No. 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 No, it couldn't be. Okay, Jenny, thank you. Jeff, Jenny's just said that the hay shed is gone. Our home is gone. The fences are down. Everything's destroyed. Oh, couldn't believe it. So a few days later, the police allowed us to go into this blackened apocalypse. And while we were walking up this very house road, I took a phone call from my son who happened to be in the Himalayas. And he said, Mum, this is such a drastic event. It must be a redirection for good. Like, huh? That's really comforting, son. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, Mum, you know more than anyone else, you can't take anything with you. Well, that was the version from my son on the very day, even before we got to the home to inspect it. But we were also cattle producers. We were primary producers, and we had 7 Herefords on the property. All our acreage had been blackened, so they lost their feed. The hay shed was down, but also the external fences, they were down. Where were they? Where could they be? We couldn't find them. We searched everywhere. We were beside ourselves. Were they destroyed in the fire? You know, many animals have been destroyed in the fire, but we were grateful because a few hundred metres down track, a neighbour told us that our cattle were alive, eating his grass and grazing by his dam. What a relief. And a band of locals helped to round them up and bring them up to the cattle yards. And the good thing is the cattle yards were spared. They were not destroyed. And within 6 months, we were able to, the next 6 months, we had our cattle adjusted by a friend on the York Peninsula. It's so good to have neighbours who can help. And we were relieved. Well, you might recognise this man. You probably can't see me very well in the red outfit, but late that night I was on television because my MP on Christmas Eve, would you believe, gave me a call and he said, Helen, the Prime Minister is coming to Lobethal and he wants to meet people who've lost their home. Will you come up and meet him? I said, what? No, I'm packing to go away. Why would I want to meet the Prime Minister? No, John, I'm sorry. And I put the phone down. Hey, Jeff. John wanted me to go up and meet the Prime Minister. Jeff said, you need to go up and see him. Well, John, I'm coming. I'll go up the freeway. I'll see you soon. So on Christmas Eve, I met the Prime Minister and he found out that I was the CEO of a charity and he said, Helen, it's your turn. It's your turn to receive. Learning to receive help was a big deal for me because I was always giving all my life. How do you feel when help is offered to you when you really need it the most? We had offers of help from friends, neighbours, relatives, everywhere. It was very difficult, but through that, I learned how to receive. And each time I visited our property, I felt sick and depressed. I could only see blackened tree trunks, stringy barks permanently scarred. I looked around at what had been lush and green and I said to Channel 7 when they came up, these are not my trees anymore. Well, with nothing left to salvage, we were convinced we had not found one item, not one heirloom, not a thing. But a few months later, a group called Rubicon went through. They were volunteers. They were all dressed up in their right gear and they went in sifting through. We didn't have any asbestos, so they were safe. But they went through the dust and the rubble and the soot and they found this one item that my eldest son had given me in 2014. This is the one treasure. This is the one tangible memory that I have left after 32 years on this beautiful property. So my work was my diversion. We gave up, and I could not let my staff down. You've got to understand, this was 3 months later after this event. We were all hit in the March 2020 by the pandemic. And I had staff who needed me. I had staff who looked up to me. So I had to rise up on another level and guide them through the pandemic. And by doing that, it helped me guide myself. It was therapeutical, it was diversional, and it was occupational, if you like. There's another, I like saying things in threes. And it was the perfect event to get me through this emotional storm. I honestly don't know what I'd do if I didn't have my work during the day. Have you found a diversion from your event to take your mind off the pain? Or do you let your emotions dictate and control the direction of your life? That is something very important to consider, because emotions are very, very powerful. Well, with new life comes new growth, new friends, new ideas, new opportunities, new direction, even a new location, new neighbours, new adventures, new ways, new jewellery, new clothes, new shoes, and even new decor. And one of the blessings of this event has been that we have no debt. I want to point you to a few acronyms. This one is not the map. It's coming. Hold on, it's coming. This one is about embracing crisis, because crisis is the cradle of creativity. Creativity is what comes through crisis. I didn't think it at the time. I never expected it. I just thought we had to survive, keep our head above water, stop from drowning. But it's important that we allow crisis to produce the creativity we need. And the one thing that holds us back from creativity is fear. If we allow fear into our minds, we will freeze our creativity. And it's important to allow it to flow. It will never flow while ever we are in a state of fear, fear of failure, fear of the future. We must overcome fear to move forward. As we know, fear stands for false evidence appearing real. And when we look back, we've often been afraid of things that didn't exist. They were mostly in our mind. Opportunity. That's the big word. There will always be new opportunity after a crisis, because opportunity gives us the new growth and the innovation. It's a natural flow. It is like nature. After the blackened, terrible disaster of the trees and the property came through the fresh, new green growth. And that metaphor applies to our lives, no matter what happens to us. Pressure. Who wants pressure? Who likes pressure? Who enjoys pressure? There are some people who, when they're thrown onto their feet to stand up in public, they're off. They love pressure. Well, most of us don't, because it hurts. It's painful. We don't know what to expect. There's a whole bunch of unknown attached to pressure. But guess what? It's good for us. It forces solutions to problems. Pressure is something we also have to embrace. And then the other word, the P word, meaning we need to plan. We need to plan. And the only way we can plan is to adopt an overcoming mindset. And it's possible, even though right now, at the beginning part of a tragedy or an event, we don't think it's possible. But it is. It is, it is, it is. It's guaranteed. Well, the Chinese know it too well. The Chinese know that the word crisis is twofold. It comes in two parts: danger and then opportunity. I'm kind of hoping that if anyone's from a Chinese background or in China, that they'll be very proud of me showing off the little bit of Chinese that I know. I can't say it very well, but I'm sure there are people listening, watching who can. But that's my Chinese for today: danger and opportunity. So Who wants diamonds? Who wants to sparkle like a diamond? Who wants to be so beautiful that we are the envy of people watching? Well, beauty and diamonds do not come overnight. We know that a diamond, well, it's just a piece of charcoal that handled pressure pretty well, or stress, if you like. But honestly, if we handle stress and pressure when those curved balls are thrown at us in life, we too can sparkle like a diamond. Yeah, I don't think that any of us are just a piece of charcoal, but the point is that under pressure, we can become beautiful. That's what a diamond is. Well, here we are. This is my map I want to share with you. This is the one thing that will give you hope should there be any event, no matter how small, no matter how big. This is how we overcome. This is how we're going to navigate and get through. I want you to hear the hope, because some of you might be going through something now. As I said before, you can't overcome overnight, but you will overcome, because those fresh green shoots come through. It's like we have to have a mindset that says, let's look for and expect the silver lining. Yeah, there is silver lining. So my map, navigating tragic events. M stands for maintaining the fun and enjoyment. So before an event or crisis, there would have been some things that you enjoyed, whether it was a swim in the ocean once a week, playing bridge with your friends once a week, perhaps going out with your friends and having coffee. Yes, maybe playing sport or doing a run. What happens when we get into this state of where we're destabilized and on wobbly legs? We tend to just wipe everything, shut it all down. Why? Because we're so overwhelmed. This is the first point that's so important. Maintain those things that you enjoy, those things that are fun. If you go to a Zumba class every week, go. If you do belly dancing like Charlene, don't stop. So we have M for maintaining. A, this is the big one, the big A, acceptance. If you don't accept the fact that something's happened like this, you will stay stuck. You will not move forward. It's the key to moving forward. It took me quite a few months. Every now and again, I'd have flashbacks. Christmas Day, which was only 5 days later, I spent the whole day weeping. But eventually came the joy. Eventually, it passed. The cloud of blackness and darkness did pass, because we started to see through the clouds. We started to see that there were other ways of living, and it didn't have to be in those beautiful Adelaide Hills. Well, one thing's for sure. When an event like this strikes, it shakes. It does shake you up so much. You have to determine your priorities. And talk about shake, shake. I mean, we realized who our friends really were. I mean, friends were popping out of all sorts of corners and places. People were popping money into our bank account. We couldn't believe it. That we were overwhelmed with the kindness and the goodness and the love that was put upon us. And then you have your family. Now, if we didn't have our son and daughter-in-law on the plains of Adelaide, they had a 2-story house, and the 2-story house meant that they lived upstairs and we had a place downstairs. We had our own bathroom and lounge room and bedroom. We just didn't have a kitchen. So that forced us to have meals together every evening for 6 months while we lived there. And not every family, not every home can accommodate and take on another couple, because everybody's scrounging for the bathroom, aren't they? But fortunately, there was upstairs, downstairs, and clearly the architect wins. But that was our family. That was our eldest son who welcomed us in from the first night. Because the first night, when those winds changed, those northerlies that went down and pushing everything down away from us, when the winds changed, suddenly up they came. And that's when we got wiped out, when we never expected it, because we were safe all day. So not everyone has faith. I highly recommend for you to explore it if you don't. But that was something that did anchor us in that time of crisis. So I happen to like alliteration, and maybe some of you do. So we have F1, F2, and F3. And that's the priorities. But there's one more P in my map. This is the blueprint, planning. If you don't plan tomorrow, when you're in a state of emotional intensity and your head is swimming around and you don't know which emotion's happening, and they're all happening at once, you have to actually look down at your diary, get a piece of paper and pen, and map out not only tomorrow, but next week and the week after and the week after, so that it's like you've got little hooks in your diary that you've got something to look forward to, even though it might be small, even though it's just a coffee with a friend. You have to plan, and then you have to repeat. Plan, repeat, plan, repeat. Now, some of us have planned. You can't run a business without planning, but this is that little extra in your private life, in your emotional life, in your spiritual life, and in your whole of life, because an event can knock us for six if we let it. And some of you might know people who are impacted by the floods of northern New South Wales. And for those people, my heart goes out to them. But if you're a friend, please stay true to being a friend and offer whatever emotional and friendship support you can do for them, because they will be going through incredible trauma, incredible. So my message today is simply that we have a way, we have a framework, we have a way to get through. And I'd like you to take this and use it for your own life and for anyone else. And you know what? I'm available to speak if you would like me to your staff. If your company or anybody around you collectively or individually has gone through a drama or a trauma or a crisis, and you think that perhaps I can help them, I'm willing, I'm available. I'm actually now a professional coach, and I have a website. It's called helenglanville.com. I'm still refining it, but I'm available to help and to speak. I'm a public speaker and coach. And if you think I can add value, tell my story to your company, to your conference, to just a staff group, I'm available. And I hope that this map is going to come in handy. I wouldn't want you to go through a crisis like I have. But if you do go through a smaller crisis, then at least you have a tool, you have a framework, and feel free to use it. Thank you so much for having me today, Rose. I probably came in under time, so unlike me, but the truth be known, I can speak for 25, 30, but I feel like I've let you down, unless you want a long lunch break.
Oh, absolutely. You have not. No, you haven't. Helen, have you written a book about this this crisis that you've undertaken and used your map as part of the book?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because the truth is we, my husband and I, have written a book called A Second Chance. It's currently at a publisher waiting for their decision about it. My husband died 1 year ago.
I know, I'm sorry for your loss, Helen.
But thank you. But 10 days before he died, he approved of the book. And in his memory, I'm believing that it will be printed this year. And it talks about not just the fire, the fire was one thing. We actually had a lot of opposition to our relationship, and the only way to get the message through to my family was elope. So we eloped, and it worked. And the reason it worked is we got the piece of paper. I knew that my parents were into the institution of marriage, and I respected them for that. But he was a divorcee, and he was 20 years older than me. And, you know, there are a few things going against him. But the point is that we produced the first grandchild. So there's been some obstacles along the way to our relationship. But the truth be known, as people from Sydney, for us to come to South Australia, that was a new life, new wife, new state, new start. And so the property in Kenton Valley was a big part of that. So 3 years down the track, I'm now single, and I'm starting a new life, and I am available for public speaking and for coaching, because I do want to help people to get through anything that they might get stuck with. There's nothing worse than being stuck. You know what I mean?
No.
We've got to get through.
Yeah. Helen, tell us a little bit about your charity, because it does magnificent work.
Oh, okay. I didn't do that, did I? Because I didn't think I was here for that.
No,
but
you're here to share whatever. And I mean,
Okay.
I loved your story, but your charity is really important too. It's part of who you are.
Thank you. Yes. So because my husband had been in prison, really sexy charity, right? He was a very naughty boy, and he took a one-way ticket to Rio in Brazil. And the authorities caught up with him, and he spent some time in prison. And only if you're really old like me do you even remember who Ronnie Biggs was. But he was in prison with Ronnie Biggs. Eventually, he came back to Australia. He was the family lawyer. I had not met him. And my father said, if my wife divorced me while I was overseas, if all my friends had left me, if I had nothing and I'd lost my station in life, I'd like to think somebody somewhere somehow would give me a second chance. That's what my father said to me. So he found the money for the bail to give Jeff, my future husband, a second chance. Well, of course, I wanted nothing to do with him because, you know, he was an international criminal. And I was some sort of religious, self-righteous git that didn't want to have anything to do with him because he was a bad, bad boy. But 3 weeks after he proposed. I said yes. And all of that's in the book. And so a second chance resonated with us. And we'd been with another federated group for 20 years. And we decided to do the thing they call the decoupling. It's a very trendy word with some people when they get divorced. Oh, we didn't divorce, we just decoupled. A bit like disconnecting a carriage to a train. And so my doctor and my politician both used the phrase. So we decoupled. And 8 years ago, we formed Second Chances SA. And so I've been the CEO of Second Chances SA for the past 8 years.
Wonderful.
And we have,
and what does the charity actually do? How do they give these past inmates a second chance?
You know, I thought you'd never ask. I should have thought of that. So we visit prisoners, especially those who don't have friends or relatives. We support them by helping them with their banking, helping store their property until they get out, and befriending them. We're always looking for new volunteers, I might add, but we also help the children. So there's two sides to our charity. There's that side of the fence and this side of the fence, and we have staff who support the children because it's not their crime, not their fault. So often a child will feel bewildered and abandoned because dad's left, and sometimes they don't even know that dad's in prison. But when they do and the other kids find out, they get bullied and teased. So we support them because we want them to stay in their education. We want them to stay in school, as the school does. So we get calls from wellbeing officers to come to the school and help Johnny stay, help him, give him techniques to stay committed and finish his education and do outside activities as well. But because we're not the government, we also get to visit mum and the kids in the home. And that's one of the questions we get asked. Are you the government? No, we're not the government. So that's an advantage. So we provide Christmas presents at Christmas to about 550 kids. We provide birthday presents every month, about 30 to 40 presents we shift out and have delivered every month to help these children recognise that they are accepted, they belong, and they have value. Someone needs to do that, especially for a child. And we do mentoring camps. We do 8 to 9 mentoring camps a year. And yeah, that's the business we're in. Nobody specialises just for the children of prisoners, but not their crime, not their fault.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And where can people find Second Chances, Helen? Because, people may want to, volunteer or make a donation or whatever the case may be.
Well, secondchancessa.com, I think it is our website. It's not difficult to find. We are definitely all over the shop, including social media. We have a Facebook page called Second Chances SA. You can chat with us. We'll get back to you, reach out. So we're certainly got a high profile in the social media space.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today, Helen. And I loved your story. I loved how you tied that in with business. It's because I know you went through a really, really difficult time, and people who go through traumatic experiences need something like your map to remember, so that that they can come out the other side, because trauma affects people in such different ways. And yeah, I think your map is something that people should remember and use, because we do eventually get over it in one way or another, but it always takes someone else to help us. I think we can't often do it on our own. We need others around us for support.
Correct. Yes. My objective is to give people hope, and hope to believe that change and overcoming is possible, and that opportunity is something to embrace, expect, and look forward to.
Absolutely. Helen, thank you so much again. And I look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.